What happens when a quiet wife gets replaced by someone with a fake resume? He thought she'd stay silent, but one phone call turned their perfect little plan into a public unraveling he never saw coming. Bloomington, Indiana, that quiet little corner of the Midwest where people still wave at each other at stop signs and think a front porch with rocking chairs counts as a personality. That's where I built my life. Slowly, carefully, like a house of cards I was too scared to breathe around. My name's Laura, and back then I was still someone's wife, the kind that made pancakes on Sundays and remembered how he liked his coffee. 2 sugars, no cream. Not because he said it, but because I paid attention. Because that's what you do when you love someone. You pay attention. Mike? He was the kind of man who wore the same boots for 10 years and still acted like replacing the laces was a grand gesture. He ran an auto parts business on the edge of town, looked like something out of a forgotten movie, with a faded sign and that grease-stained desk he never cleaned. He used to come home smelling like old rubber and stale coffee. I didn't mind it. Some people breathe in lavender. I breathed in that man's tired shoulders and the way he dropped his keys on the table like it was the only thing anchoring him to the house. We didn't have passion anymore, but we had rhythm. You know what I mean? That kind of silent dance 2 people do when they've memorized each other's habits so well they stop asking questions. I knew when he'd switch off the porch light, when he'd crack open a beer, when he'd pretend to listen and grunt at the right moments. It wasn't love, not anymore. But it was ours, and I held on to that like it meant something. The house was small but warm, yellow curtains, too many cushions, a kitchen that always smelled like garlic or cinnamon. I kept it clean. Not for him, no, for me. Because when everything else feels like it's unraveling, you cling to the things you can control, like wiping down the counters, like straightening the pillows before bed, even if no one ever says thank you. And he stopped saying thank you a long time ago. It's funny. You never really notice when someone starts pulling away. It doesn't come with fireworks or slammed doors. It's quieter than that. It's in the way he stopped kissing my forehead, the way his eyes passed through me like I was part of the furniture, the way he laughed a little too long at his phone, then turned the screen down when I walked in. I wasn't blind. I was just tired. Tired of guessing. Tired of hoping, tired of asking, is everything okay? And getting the same flat, yeah, just work. Tired of not knowing whether it was me or if I just faded into the wallpaper of his life. And somewhere in the middle of that quiet unraveling, Jessica showed up, young, bright-eyed, with a voice that made people lean in and a laugh that didn't know what struggle sounded like. He hired her because the guys needed help with the new inventory system. She stayed because someone needed something new to look at. No, I didn't say anything. Not yet. I smiled when he brought her up. Jessica figured out the spreadsheets. Jessica's got good instincts. Jessica made cookies for the whole crew. I smiled, and I swallowed the bitter thing rising in my throat like it didn't matter. Because at that point, I still believed if I just kept being the steady one, the patient one, the wife, he'd come back. He didn't, and the air in that house? It got so still you could hear a heartbreak just trying to beat. It was his birthday. Nothing big, just a quiet Friday in late October. The kind of day when the trees look like they're on fire and the air smells like wood smoke and endings. I got up early, made cinnamon rolls from scratch. Not from a can, not store-bought. Real ones? I even set the table with those heavy plates we only used when people came over, which was never anymore. Still, I lit the candle in the middle and poured his coffee just how he liked it, like muscle memory. The gift? A custom model of his first car, that old '68 Mustang he never stopped talking about. He once told me it was the only thing he ever loved before he met me. So yeah, I found a guy on Etsy who builds them by hand. Details down to the rust patterns. Took 6 weeks and more money than I care to admit. But I figured maybe he'd remember. Maybe it'd mean something. He walked in, saw the table, the rolls, the box, and blinked like he wasn't sure he was in the right house. "Oh," he said, Just that. One syllable. Then, you didn't have to do all this. Not thank you. Not, you remembered. Just, you didn't have to. He opened the box like it was a bill, looked at the car for all of 2 seconds, nodded, and said, "Neat." Then he went to the garage. Didn't touch the cinnamon rolls. Coffee sat there getting cold. Candle burned out. I sat there watching it all. That little flicker of hope inside me. Gone, just like that flame. Not because he was cruel. No, Mike was never cruel. That would have been easier to deal with. He was just empty. Hollowed out from the inside, like something important had slipped out of him while I wasn't looking. And the worst part? He didn't even notice that it mattered to me. Later that night, I walked into the garage. The Mustang model was on a shelf, still in the box. Like it didn't belong. Like I didn't belong. That was the night I stopped making excuses for him in my head. No, he wasn't tired. No, it wasn't just stress. He had checked out, and I had stayed. Stayed through his silences, his deflections, his blank stares. Stayed when he forgot how to ask how my day was, when he started locking his phone, when he began smiling at things I wasn't saying. Stayed because walking away felt like failure. But staying, that felt like slow disappearance. It's strange, isn't it, how you can share a roof, a bed, a name, and still be lonelier than if you lived on the moon. He didn't need me anymore. He needed someone to look at him like he was still interesting. And I had made the mistake of loving him too quietly. But I felt it that night. Something had shifted. Not in him. In me. I didn't say anything. I just sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the silence between us grow teeth. Kimmy's the kind of friend who doesn't waste words. We've known each other since college, back when we thought burnt popcorn and bad dates were the worst things life could throw at us. She sees straight through people, and that includes me. So when she called me that Tuesday morning and said, "I need to ask you something, and don't roll your eyes," I knew something was up. I was sitting on the porch, still in my robe, sipping coffee that had gone cold 20 minutes earlier, but I kept drinking it like it could still warm me up. That's what most of those days felt like, pretending the heat was still there, even though it clearly wasn't. Kimmy didn't beat around the bush. You ever wonder what's going on between Mike and that new girl at his shop? Just like that. No soft landing. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was the only thing left to do when the ground under you starts cracking. "You mean Jessica?" I said. "The one who wears heels to a warehouse job and calls everyone babe?" "Yeah, that one," I wanted to snap back. Defend him. Say something like, "Mike's not that guy." But the words stuck in my throat, like they didn't want to lie for me anymore. Instead, I said, "She's 26, Kim. He's old enough to be her older uncle, at least." "Uh-huh," she replied. "And yet, here we are. You're home baking lasagna, and he's spending overtime teaching her how to label parts." Please. It was supposed to be sarcasm, but it landed heavy. That night, I watched him walk in the door. No hello, no how was your day. He tossed his keys on the counter, pulled off his boots, and turned on the TV like he'd been living alone for years. I looked at him, really looked. His shirt had a smear of lipstick I told myself was probably ketchup. His phone buzzed and he smiled at it, one of those slow, crooked smiles I hadn't seen in years. And definitely not for me. I felt something split open, quietly, internally, like a seam coming undone on a favorite coat. You don't notice right away, but the cold starts to creep in. I started noticing everything after that. The way he shaved on his day off. The cologne he hadn't worn in 3 years suddenly making a comeback. The new playlist on his phone that didn't have a single classic rock song on it. It was like living with a ghost that had decided to come back to life. Just not for you. I didn't say anything, not because I didn't care, but because part of me still hoped it would pass. That maybe it was just a phase, a late midlife shakeup that he'd snap out of. But deep down, I knew. I knew the moment I found that receipt in his coat pocket. Dinner for two at that new steakhouse downtown. The one we had talked about going to for 2 years and never did? And the handwriting on the back? Not mine. It said, "Next time, dessert's on me." I folded the receipt, put it back in his coat, and zipped the pocket shut. No confrontation, no tears, just silence, because I wasn't ready to scream. Not yet. But the silence I gave him from that day on? It wasn't love anymore. It was loading. It was a Sunday morning, the kind where everything feels just a little too quiet. Overcast sky, no birds, even the neighbor's dog wasn't barking like usual. I should have known something was off. Sometimes your body feels it before your brain catches up, like the air changes, but you can't explain why. I got up late, which never happened. The house was still, no sound of the shower running, no boots on the floor, no keys jangling in the kitchen. Just silence, thick enough to choke on. At first I figured he'd gone out for coffee, maybe to the shop. He used to do that on weekends when inventory was behind. I went to the kitchen. His coffee mug was still clean, still dry, the way I left it yesterday. That's when I saw it, my phone, face up on the counter, with a message from a number I didn't recognize. No name, just a number. It read, "We need to talk. I'm not coming back. Please understand." No greeting, no signature, like I was just supposed to know. And the worst part? I did. There was no drama, no slammed doors, no suitcase by the bed. Just gone. Like he'd slipped out of our life while I was sleeping, careful not to wake the version of me that still believed in us. I stood there in my robe, next to a stove that hadn't even warmed up yet, staring at that message like maybe I'd misread it. Maybe "not coming back" was code for "just need some time," but deep down there was no maybe left in me. It was exactly what it sounded like. He was done. That morning I didn't cry. Not right away. I just stood. The kitchen light flickered once. I reached for the switch, turned it off, sat down at the table and stared at the empty chair across from me, the one he always dragged slightly to the left, the one he never pushed in. I waited for a follow-up message, for a knock on the door, for something. Instead, 2 hours later, a courier knocked. Not Mike, a stranger in a brown uniform holding a small box with his name on the label. Inside, 3 shirts, his electric razor, a worn leather wallet I gave him for our 10th anniversary, and a folded sticky note that just said, "Thanks for everything. Take care. Take care." Like this was a break room goodbye, not the collapse of a 17-year life. I placed everything on the coffee table, sat back on the couch. The room felt too big. I wasn't angry, not yet, just hollow. And right there, in the middle of that hollow silence, the truth started crawling in. He didn't leave in a moment of passion. He didn't storm out after a fight. He planned it, packed light, left like it was a business trip he wasn't coming back from, and he didn't even have the decency to lie to my face. He took the easy way out and left me holding the silence. It wasn't just that he left, it was how he left, like I was a chapter he'd finished reading and couldn't be bothered to dog-ear the page. He didn't even take his coat, the one I bought him for Christmas 2 years ago, the one he said was too nice to wear, and then wore every other day for 6 months. It was still hanging by the door, right where he always left it. Still had a cough drop in the pocket and a faded gas receipt I didn't throw away because I was too numb to care. That's the thing they never tell you about being left. It's not the big dramatic moments that gut you. It's the small stuff, the leftovers, the toothbrush still sitting in the cup, the charger still plugged in by the nightstand, the way his side of the bed was still a little indented the next morning, like even the mattress hadn't caught on yet. 2 days passed. No call, no message, just a silence so loud I thought I'd go mad listening to it. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. My body kept waiting for something to happen, a confrontation, an apology, a reason, but nothing came. And then, like the universe wanted to twist the knife a little more, it did come. but not from him. I was in the checkout line at the grocery store. A regular Tuesday, just trying to buy bananas and milk like life hadn't blown a hole through my chest. The girl at the register, young, chatty, too much mascara, tilted her head and gave me that look. You know the one. That, I know something you don't, and I'm deciding whether to say it kind of look. And she said, too casual, hey, aren't you Mike's wife? Or ex-wife, I guess. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I'd hit the floor. Yeah, I'm Laura. Oh, she said, smiling like this was fun gossip. I follow Jessica on Instagram. She posted a picture of them together this morning. Said something like, new beginnings, with a picture of them holding hands at the diner. I didn't say anything, didn't even blink. I just nodded, took my receipt, and walked out without the bananas or the milk. I sat in my car and stared at the dashboard like it owed me an explanation. But all I could hear in my head was her voice. New beginnings, that was what this was for them, not a wreck, not a betrayal, a beginning. I didn't cry. Not then. I felt something colder than sadness, something tighter, not heartbreak, humiliation. He hadn't just left. He'd moved on, publicly, casually, like I was a side character who got written off in the pilot episode. And her? Jessica? She posted it like it was a promotion, like she'd just landed the corner office and couldn't wait to hang curtains. That was the moment something inside me stopped begging for answers. I wasn't asking why anymore. I was asking, what now? Because I realized he wasn't coming back. And if this was a game to them, they forgot one thing: I still had my voice. I thought the worst part would be the leaving. Turns out, it was what came after. You know how some people vanish and you're left chasing shadows, looking for closure in all the places they forgot to clean up after themselves? Mike didn't even leave crumbs. Just silence, and a town that suddenly knew more about my life than I did. Word spread fast. Spread. Bloomington isn't a gossip town, not officially, but news here moves like water, quiet, steady, and always downhill. By the end of the week, even the barista at the coffee shop gave me that sympathetic half smile, like she'd already picked a side. I didn't want pity. I wanted answers. That's when I went digging. Not for drama, not for revenge. For truth. I stopped by the school office on Thursday to pick up a box of my things I'd left before switching to remote work. I wasn't planning to stay long, just grab the box, smile politely, and get out of there before anyone asked me how I was holding up. But fate's got a mean sense of humor. While I waited, I wandered past the old file cabinet in the admin room. The drawer was open and a few folders were sticking out. I saw her name, Jessica Hanley. That same handwriting I remembered from a sign-in sheet a few months back when Mike brought her to a school fundraiser as his office coordinator. I should have walked away. Should have walked. I really should have. But I didn't. I pulled the file. Inside, her application from 6 months ago, before Mike even mentioned hiring someone. Resume, cover letter, 3 references. And every single one of them? A red flag with a bow on it. One former employer listed a phone number I recognized. Not from a business, from Facebook. It was her dad's landscaping company, the one she used to tag in stories about helping out on weekends. Another reference? A woman who, after a quick search, turned out to be her college roommate. It wasn't just messy, it was a joke. Nothing checked out. I sat there holding that file like it was radioactive. My hands didn't shake, not really, but I felt a heat rise in my chest that had nothing to do with anger. It was something colder. He chose this, chose to leave me, his wife of 17 years, for someone who didn't even bother to write a believable job history. She hadn't earned her place. She faked it, and he rewarded her for it. And the kicker? The part that made my stomach twist? I remembered him once telling me I wasn't ambitious enough, that I should push harder if I wanted to get promoted at work. Meanwhile, he's out here handing promotions to a woman who padded her resume with family favors and social charm. That's when I stopped doubting myself, Stopped wondering what I could have done differently. It wasn't me. It was him and her, and a world that still gives the loudest microphone to the ones with the glossiest stories. I didn't confront him. I didn't call her. I didn't cry, but I made a copy of that file, tucked it into my purse like it was made of glass. No plan, no revenge fantasy, just facts. Facts don't lie, and sooner or later they come knocking. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. Not really. I mean, my name was still on the mortgage, the photos were still on the walls, those smiling, frozen moments from 10 years ago when we still had inside jokes and a reason to hold hands in public. But every room felt like it was holding its breath. He'd been gone just under a month. Not a word. No apology, no explanation, no, let's talk. Just a full vanishing act, like he'd packed up his conscience and left it in storage. I started talking to the furniture. That's how far gone I was. You still creak when I sit on you, don't you? I muttered to the couch one night. Nothing answered, of course, but it made more noise than Mike did lately, so I counted it as company. Evenings were the worst. Around 6:30, when he used to walk through the door and dump his keys on the counter with that same rhythm every time. I still flinched at the sound of car doors outside, still looked up when tires hit the gravel. Like maybe, just maybe, he'd come back and say it was a mistake. But he didn't, and every day he didn't was a new kind of silence I had to get used to. The routines kept going, like clockwork with no hands. I still made coffee at 7:05, still turned on the porch light at dusk, still opened the windows on Thursdays to air out the living room, because he hated the smell of dust, and I was too used to doing things for someone who'd stopped noticing. And it hit me one night, standing at the sink, rinsing a plate I hadn't used, drying a cup that hadn't been touched, that I was living with a ghost. Not the haunting kind, the kind that walks out and leaves everything behind, expecting you to clean up the echoes. I started watching old sitcoms, the ones with laugh tracks, because even fake laughter was better than none. I'd sit there on the couch with a bowl of cereal at 9 p.m., nodding along like I belonged in that plastic world. One night I said out loud, "At least they know how to end a sentence." No one laughed, but I did, quietly, bitterly, because it was either laugh or fall apart. Sometimes I caught myself wondering what they talked about. Mike and Jessica. Did he tell her the same stories he told me? Recycle the same jokes? Or did he suddenly become more interesting, more awake, now that I wasn't around to remember who he used to be? That's the thing they don't say. Being replaced doesn't hurt as much as realizing they didn't even try to make you feel irreplaceable. And yet, I didn't scream. I didn't text, didn't beg. Because somewhere in that hollow, echoing silence, I started to hear something else. My own voice. It was shaky, small, but it was still there. And it wasn't asking, "Why did he leave?" anymore. It was asking, "Why did I let myself disappear?" It started with a rumor, a whisper over coffee, one of those throwaway comments people make when they think they're just passing time, but end up handing you a key to something bigger. I ran into John at the hardware store. We used to work together at the school district. He managed budgets, I wrangled paperwork. Solid guy, always a little too loud, but sharp. We were standing by the paint samples, both pretending we knew the difference between eggshell and ivory mist, when he glanced around and leaned in. "So?" "Mike's new hire." "Jessica, right?" I nodded. "Careful." He chuckled under his breath. "She's climbing fast, huh?" I didn't answer, just tilted my head. Let him keep talking. "Not my business," he said, which always means exactly the opposite, but I heard she's already managing inventory. Been there, what, 3 months? 2 months. She started part-time and somehow skipped the usual maze of low-level tasks the rest of us used to crawl through. No probation, no adjustment period. Just walked in and got the fast track. And here's the thing. I know that game. I've played by its rules for years. You put your head down, you do the work, you get passed over, then you get told to be patient. Jessica didn't wait. She didn't need to. She had Mike, and Mike apparently had no shame. That night, something turned over in my stomach. Not jealousy, not even anger. It was recognition. The realization that this wasn't some storybook betrayal. This was a pattern, a quiet professional rewrite that erased me while she took the title. I pulled out the old office group photo from last year's fundraiser. There we were, standing side by side, arms around each other like we were still a team. I remembered how he introduced me as the glue, the one who kept things running behind the scenes. I was never the headline, but I held the whole thing together. Now, Jessica was the one getting his attention, his approval, maybe even the same tired praise he used to hand me like a participation trophy. "She's got instincts," he used to say. Funny how those instincts lined up perfectly with whatever got her ahead. I sat at the dining room table, staring at nothing, one finger circling the rim of my glass. I wasn't thinking about love, or even betrayal. I was thinking about power, how quickly it shifts, how quietly it leaves, and how often women like me give it away, one tiny compromise at a time. I'd worked, I'd built, I'd stayed. And all it took to replace me was a new smile in the office and a phone number in his back pocket. But she hadn't earned it, and he hadn't seen what he'd lost. Not yet. There's a drawer in the hallway I hadn't opened in years. The kind of drawer that collects the things you don't throw away but never really need. Old keys, expired coupons, pens that don't work, but you keep just in case. That drawer I was cleaning. Not because I'm one of those people who scrubs sadness away with lemon-scented spray, but because I couldn't sit still anymore. Grief is loud when the house is quiet. So I cleaned, vacuumed behind furniture, washed curtains I forgot I owned, took every book off the shelf and wiped the dust like it owed me something. That's how I ended up with the drawer open and my hands in old papers. Among the clutter, there it was. A manila folder labeled HR Mike. His writing, thick black marker. I almost put it back, almost, but something stopped me. Inside, an old stack of onboarding files from when he first launched the warehouse's second location. Resumes, contracts, tax forms. It was all there, including a few random background checks they used to run when they were still pretending to be official about things. And in the middle of it all, Jessica's file. I didn't expect to find it. Honestly, I didn't even remember we kept copies. But there it was, stapled, annotated, sloppy, no graduation date, job titles that didn't match her public profile, and 3 references. I recognized one immediately, her previous manager, listed as Robert Hanley, her dad. The second one? A boutique manager who had since moved states according to her latest Instagram post about leaving the chaos behind. The third was a personal contact with no company listed, just life coach, no background check form, no signed HR confirmation. Nothing stamped or verified. It wasn't just incomplete, it was careless, like she knew no one would look too closely. I sat there, reading every line like it was a punch to the gut, because I remembered fighting tooth and nail for every position I ever held. I remembered rehearsing for interviews, second-guessing every word, updating resumes at midnight. And here she was, rising up the ranks with a document that wouldn't pass a high school job fair. I made a copy, quietly, no drama, slipped it into a plain envelope and tucked it at the bottom of my purse like a secret, not because I had a plan, but because something had shifted. I wasn't trying to prove anything to Mike anymore. That ship had sunk with 1,000 holes in it. I was reminding myself that I wasn't crazy, that I hadn't imagined the double standard, that what was happening wasn't just betrayal. It was insult, wrapped in convenience and sealed with silence. I zipped the purse, poured myself a glass of water, stood there at the sink, listening to the hum of the fridge, the creak of the old floorboard near the pantry. Sometimes power doesn't come back all at once. Sometimes it starts with a single piece of paper, and the realization that the truth is finally in your hands. The phone rang just past noon on a Thursday. I was making soup, nothing fancy, just the kind you throw together with whatever's left in the fridge. Carrots soft at the edges, half an onion, broth that had been sitting there long enough to start making eye contact. When I saw his name light up the screen, I didn't move at first. It had been weeks. No calls, no messages, no, "Hey, are you surviving?" Just gone. And now, he calls? I let it ring twice, 3 times, picked it up on the 4th but didn't say a word. His voice came through like gravel. "You did it, didn't you?" No greeting, no explanation, just accusation. I still said nothing, just held the phone to my ear and waited. "You called them. You told someone at the company. Jessica just got pulled into HR and she's out. They let her go this morning." Still nothing from me? Because when a man finally says the one thing you've been waiting to hear, not "I'm sorry," not "I miss you," but "you made an impact," you let the silence speak for you. "You think this fixes anything?" he went on, voice rising just enough to let me know he wasn't in control. "You think you've won?" I took a breath. Finally. "I didn't do anything, Mike. I asked a question. Simple. Clean. No emotion on the surface, but inside I was shaking with a storm I'd been holding back since the day he walked out." "What question?" "They do background checks, don't they?" He went quiet, and then softer, like he didn't want to admit what he was really asking. "Why would you do this to her?" That hit differently. To her, not to me, not to our marriage, to Jessica. I almost laughed. Almost, but instead I let the words fall like bricks. "Maybe because someone should have asked that before giving her a job she didn't earn." He exhaled through his nose, the kind of sound people make when they've run out of arguments but don't want to admit they were wrong. Then he said the line I'll never forget. "You ruined her chance. She's young. She didn't deserve that." And I, finally, let it out. "She didn't deserve it?" "Mike, I gave you 17 years. I cleaned your house, paid your bills when your shop tanked, stayed while you built something out of nothing. I sat in rooms full of people pretending I wasn't even there so you could shine. I earned every inch of this life." She walked in with a fake resume and a smile. He didn't interrupt. He didn't have to, because for once I wasn't talking for him. I was talking for me. "And you didn't leave me for love, Mike. You left me for a fantasy. A cheap one. And it just cost you both more than you realized." Another pause. "I never meant to hurt you," he said finally. Weak, like a man who's realizing a little too late that actions don't reset. I looked out the window. The soup was burning. I didn't care. "I didn't do it to hurt you," I said quietly. "I did it because you both thought I'd stay quiet forever." Then I hung up, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel bitter. I felt heard. It wasn't some grand scheme. There was no folder labeled revenge sitting on my desk. I didn't have a whiteboard with arrows and timelines. I just made one phone call. One. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was folding laundry, towels that still smelled like the detergent he picked, the kind I used to rebuy out of habit, not because I liked it. His scent was fading, but it still clung to the corners of the house like a bad echo. I'd stared at that envelope for 3 days, the copy of Jessica's file sitting in my purse like it was ticking. It wasn't about punishing her. It wasn't about him either. It was about looking at something I knew was wrong and doing something. I called the company's main office, not the local number, the one in Chicago where corporate sat. I didn't give my name. I didn't raise my voice. I just asked a simple question. "Do you typically verify employment histories for new hires, especially in roles tied to inventory or finance?" There was a pause. The woman on the other end, pleasant but brisk, said, "Yes, we're in the process of tightening that after a few irregularities came to our attention." I said thank you, and hung up. That was it. One question, no threats, no accusations, no dramatic monologue. I didn't need to do more, I just needed to tip the first domino. A few days later, I got a text from a mutual friend. "Did you hear what happened at Mike's warehouse?" HR got involved. Someone flagged Jessica's application. She's out. Out. That word sat on my tongue like cold coffee. She was out. Just like that. I didn't celebrate, didn't pop a bottle, or dance around the kitchen. There's no trophy for getting the truth acknowledged. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing you weren't crazy. That what you saw, what you felt, was real. And it mattered. And Mike? Oh, he felt it. He called me the next day, like I was supposed to explain it to him, like I owed him answers. But he knew. He just didn't expect I'd ever speak up. He spent so long convincing himself I was the quiet one, the dependable one, the woman who smiled through dinner even when it tasted like regret, the one who cleaned up after his messes and still asked how his day went. He mistook my silence for permission. He mistook my stillness for weakness. But here's the thing about people like me. We don't explode. We decide. And when we do, it's not loud. It's clean, sharp, permanent. I didn't need revenge. I just needed my voice back. And I used it. Once. Clearly. And the sound of that one? Quiet truth? It echoed louder than anything he ever said. He called again that night. Same number. Same name lighting up the screen like nothing had changed, as if we were just two people circling back to a conversation that never ended right. I didn't plan to answer. I stared at the phone for a full 10 seconds, thumb hovering over the screen. But something in me, it wasn't curiosity, it wasn't hope, maybe just tired defiance, made me swipe. He jumped in before I could even say hello. You didn't have to make it public, he said, his voice tight, like he was holding his breath and anger in the same chest. You could have just come to me. I let the silence stretch. I wanted him to hear it, feel it, the same way I'd sat with silence in our house day after day while he laughed at his phone and turned his back at dinner. I came to you for years, Mike, I said finally. You just weren't listening. He didn't like that. You could hear it in the way his jaw clenched between syllables. She's devastated, he said. You embarrassed her. This could mess up her career. And there it was again. Her. He wasn't calling about what he did, or what he'd thrown away. He was calling because someone he replaced me with got caught in her own lie, and somehow that was my fault. I didn't embarrass her, I said, my voice low but steady. She did that herself. I just made sure the lights were on when it happened. The line went still. Then a sigh. Not the heavy, dramatic kind. The quiet kind. Defeated. Uncertain. You don't understand, he said, softer. Things weren't the same between us. I didn't mean for it to go this way. I almost laughed. Didn't mean for it to go this way, like he tripped into someone else's bed, like he misplaced 17 years of marriage in the laundry. No, Mike, I said, calm as ever. You meant for it to feel good. You just didn't plan for the part where it cost you something. Another silence. But this one was different. Thicker, like he was searching for the version of me he could reason with, the one who made his excuses sound better. But she wasn't here anymore. She looked up to you, he said. That stopped me. Not because it hurt, but because of how twisted it was. You mean the woman who replaced me in your bed and your business admired me? I asked. Well, that's rich. I heard him shift, maybe standing, pacing. He used to do that when he didn't know what to say. You've changed, he said, like it was some kind of accusation. You're just finally seeing me, I replied. And that was the truth of it. For years, I'd been the background noise to his life. Supportive, predictable, easy to tune out. Until one day, the static sharpened into a voice. My voice, clear, firm, and done being invisible. He didn't say goodbye, just hung up, and I sat there, holding the quiet like a badge. No tears, no second guessing, because I knew in that moment he finally understood something. I wasn't the woman who got left. I was the one who stood back up and let the silence speak louder than him. She vanished just as quickly as she'd appeared. 1 week she was all over town, bright blouses, high heels in a place that ran on boots and back pain, laughing too loud at tables she hadn't earned a seat at. The next week, Gone. No warning, no explanation. Just poof. I didn't look for her, but word gets around. A friend of a friend said she cleared out her desk in silence, eyes glassy, mouth tight. Didn't even say goodbye to the crew. Left behind a half-used coffee mug and a sticky note with a quote about starting over. And then her online life started unraveling too. Photos gone, captions deleted. Mike and me turned into just me, and then, eventually, nothing at all. The kind of digital erasure people do when they're trying to outrun the truth with clean filters and a fresh zip code. Someone said she was spotted at the airport with 2 suitcases and a face that didn't want to be recognized. I didn't ask where she was going. It didn't matter, because the thing is, she was never really here. Not in the sense that matters. She slipped into a space someone else built and tried to make it hers with charm and shortcuts. But a borrowed crown doesn't fit forever. I wasn't glad she lost her job. I wasn't sitting in the dark cackling about poetic justice. I wasn't even angry anymore. What I felt was clarity. Jessica wasn't the enemy. She was a mirror. She showed me the space I left empty by being too quiet, too patient, too afraid to claim what I'd earned. And Mike, he was never the prize. He was the lesson. That morning, I made tea. Not coffee. Tea. Something softer. Something that didn't cling to memory so tightly. I sat by the window in the living room, the one he used to sit near when pretending to read the newspaper while scrolling on his phone. I looked out at the front yard, still messy from the season, and didn't feel the urge to fix it right away. I just let it be what it was. Unraveled. In transition. The wind picked up a little, brushing the trees in that way that always makes you feel like the world is moving, even when you're still. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt still. And after everything, that felt like power. He called again. Because of course he did. It was late. Close to 9. One of those evenings when the house finally stops humming and you can hear yourself think too clearly. I saw his name pop up on the screen, and this time I didn't wait. I picked up with a simple, flat yeah. He didn't waste time. His voice had that tight, tired edge men get when they're trying not to sound like they've been crying. You happy now? No hello. No, how are you? Just straight to the point, like I was the villain in a story he hadn't taken the time to finish reading. I leaned back in the chair, looked at the lamp across the room. One of the few things in the house we picked out together and didn't argue about. Funny how that became my compass. If the lamp still works, I must be okay. You think this was about winning? I said. You think there's a prize here? I'm just saying, he started, then stopped, then tried again. You got what you wanted. I laughed. Not a real laugh, more like air with teeth. You think I wanted this? I asked. You think I wanted to find out you left me for someone you barely knew, who couldn't even list 3 real jobs on a resume? You think I wanted to be humiliated in a town where people pretend not to stare but talk like parrots in the parking lot? He didn't respond, just breathing on the other end. Let me make something clear, I continued. I didn't expose her because I wanted payback. I didn't make that call to get even. I did it because you both thought I'd never speak. You made me small, and you thought I'd stay that way. I could hear him shifting, probably pacing, that old habit of his when the truth got too close to the skin. You don't get to paint me as the villain now, I said. Not when you're the one who dropped a grenade in our life and walked away before it exploded. A pause, a longer one. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, You've changed. It wasn't angry, it wasn't accusatory, it sounded almost surprised, and maybe he meant it as a jab, but I took it as a badge. Yeah, I said. I have. He didn't say goodbye, just hung up again. The coward's exit. Fitting, really. I sat there for a minute, holding the silence, feeling how light it suddenly felt. Not because anything got fixed, but because I finally stopped carrying what wasn't mine. I stood up, walked to the sink, poured out the cold tea, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't look back to see if anyone was watching. I changed my voicemail that week. It wasn't planned. I was just sitting there, scrolling through settings on my phone, deleting old messages I didn't need anymore. Hey, call me when you can. Don't forget your appointment. This is your pharmacy. And I hit the option for voicemail greeting. The old one was still there. My voice from who knows when, soft, apologetic. Hi, this is Laura. Sorry I missed you. Leave a message and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I listened to it twice. That voice? It didn't sound like me anymore. It sounded like someone waiting to be needed. So I hit record, and without thinking, I said, "You've reached Laura. If you knew the old version, well, this one doesn't apologize for missing calls." Click. Saved. Done. It felt ridiculous and small, and completely necessary. Later that afternoon, I pulled out the box from the garage, the one labeled Mike's Stuff in black marker. I'd packed it weeks ago, but hadn't done anything with it. It sat there like a question I hadn't decided how to answer. I opened it one last time, just to check. Inside were the things you think you'll miss and then realize you don't. An old flannel that still smelled like his cologne, a broken wristwatch he never fixed, and that dusty stack of vinyls he always said he'd play more often. And there, at the bottom, was the model car. The '68 Mustang replica I gave him for his birthday. The one he never even took out of the box. I held it for a long moment, ran my fingers over the edges. It was beautiful, detailed, thoughtful. Everything he'd stopped noticing. I didn't cry. I didn't throw it across the room or light it on fire in the driveway. I just set it aside, kept it, not for him, for me, because I remembered the version of myself who bought it, the one who believed love was in the little things. She didn't deserve to be forgotten either. By the end of the day, the box was back in the garage, taped shut this time, not because I was saving anything, but because closure, like most things, is cleaner when it's on your terms. And that night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I signed up for a community class, auto restoration, just for fun, just for me. Turns out there's a shop downtown that lets you bring in your own project. I thought about the model. Then I thought about finding the real thing, not to give it to anyone, not to impress, just to feel the engine rumble under my own hands, because I wasn't rebuilding the car, I was rebuilding me. Kimmy showed up on my porch with 2 cups of bad gas station coffee and that look on her face, the one that said, "I'm not leaving until you spill." She didn't knock, she never does, just eased the screen door open with her hip and gave me that eyebrow raise only real friends can get away with. "You look different," she said, sitting before I could offer. "What did you do? Finally throw his stuff in the river?" I laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that has roots. Deep ones. The kind that says, "It's been a road." "No rivers involved," I said. "Just a few decisions and a voicemail update." She squinted. "A voicemail?" Told the world I don't apologize anymore. Kimmy grinned. That slow, proud, there she is grin. "Well, hell, I like this version of you. You've got something in your eyes. Fire or peace, I can't tell." "Bit of both," I said. Truth was, I felt lighter, not happy, not glowing, not jumping into a new chapter like a movie scene kind of free. But steady, present, like I'd stopped waiting for a door to open and realized I was holding the key the whole time. She looked around the porch, her eyes landing on the small workbench I'd dragged out last weekend. "That yours?" "Yep." "What are you building?" "Rebuilding," I said. "An old engine. Maybe the whole car if I don't mess it up." Kimmy whistled low. "You serious?" "Dead serious." She leaned back in her chair, sipped her watery coffee like it was champagne. "I swear, if you turn into one of those women who start flipping vintage cars and writing self-help books, I'm not going to survive it." I grinned. "Relax. I'm still me. I just stopped waiting to be noticed." We sat there a while, no heavy talks, no more picking at old wounds. Just 2 women, 2 coffees, and the sound of wind moving through half-dead leaves. And under all that, peace, not the loud kind, the kind that hums underneath your skin once the fight leaves your bones and your voice finally stops shaking. "You good?" she asked. I thought about it. Let the question land. "I'm getting there," I said, and for the first time, I meant it. The porch felt different now. Same paint chipping on the railing, same hummingbird feeder hanging from the gutter, same creaky swing that always leaned to the right. But something in the air had shifted. I sat there that evening with a blanket over my knees and a mug of tea that had gone lukewarm, not because I forgot it, but because I wasn't rushing anymore. I used to drink fast, move fast, think fast, trying to stay ahead of the ache that always followed me around like a shadow. But not tonight. Tonight, I let it all be slow. The neighbors were inside. The sky was turning that soft gold before the dark settles in. I watch the wind bend the grass and listen to the faint clatter of someone's wind chimes 2 yards over. Peaceful, quiet, nothing special. And yet, everything. I wasn't waiting for headlights anymore. That was the biggest difference. I used to sit out there every evening, pretending to enjoy the weather, when really I was just hoping he'd pull into the driveway. Hoping maybe he'd remember how we used to laugh, or how I always left the porch light on even when I didn't want to. Now, that light stayed off, not out of anger, not even pride, out of finally learning that love doesn't mean standing at the window watching for someone who stopped choosing you. I let the swing move gently under me. No rush, no push. Just motion. The kind that soothes, not the kind that chases. And you know what? I didn't feel lonely. I felt with myself, not the version of me that was built around him, his routines, his moods, his silences, but the one who liked slow mornings, greasy tools, and the feel of an engine humming under her own hands. I didn't need someone to walk through the door. I needed this quiet, this porch, this moment of not needing to be someone's anything. Because sometimes healing isn't a loud victory. It's sitting alone at dusk and realizing I am enough company for my own evening. People think closure comes like a bang, a letter, a last word, a dramatic walkaway. But that's not how it works. Not really. Real closure? It comes in pieces. Quiet ones. Moments you don't even notice until you're standing in the middle of them, breathing easier and wondering when that happened. Mine came on a Tuesday. No fanfare. Just a slow morning, a chipped mug, and the sound of the neighbor's lawnmower somewhere down the street. I was organizing the garage, sifting through shelves filled with things that once felt important. Boxes labeled holiday, an old folding chair he never fixed, a broken radio we swore we'd donate. And tucked in the back, behind a stack of dusty tarps, was a photo album I hadn't touched in years. Thick, heavy, a little warped at the corners from the heat. I sat on the floor and opened it. Page after page. Smiling faces, vacations, birthdays, backyard dinners, arms wrapped around each other like promises. It should have hurt. And for a second, it did. That dull pinch in the chest when you see a version of yourself who hadn't learned better yet. But then it passed, because I saw it for what it was. Not lies, just moments, real in their time. And gone now, like songs you used to love but don't play anymore. Doesn't mean they didn't matter, just means you've outgrown the melody. I closed the album, put it on the shelf, didn't toss it, didn't cling to it, just let it rest where it belonged, in the past. Later that day, I went back to the auto shop. The guy running the place, Bill, always wearing a baseball cap too big for his head, handed me a box of tools and nodded toward my project. "You gonna finish it?" he asked. I looked at the frame. Rusted, incomplete, stubborn in all the ways that made it feel honest. "I am now," I said, "because here's the truth. Some things fall apart so you can build something with your own hands. Not perfect, but yours. And if someone walks away while you're still under construction, let them. They were never meant to stay long enough to see what you'd become." I wiped the grease on my jeans, pulled my hair back, and got to work. No audience, no applause, just the sound of a wrench clicking into place, and a woman finally choosing herself.
If this story spoke to you, give it a like and subscribe to the channel. More raw, honest stories are coming, ones you just might see yourself in. See you soon.